Final Fantasy XVI's combat system is chock full of abilities, combos, gear, and mechanics that make it really engaging, but also a little bit hard to tell what's actually worth your attention. It's easy to get a bit overwhelmed and just fall back into using basic attacks, and while you can pretty much hack and slash your way through this game, if you do, you'll be missing out on a lot of fun. So, we're going to break down all the truly essential combat mechanics you need to know for your entire playthrough and can actually use early in the game, not stuff you only get access to like 20 or 30 hours in. We'll check out the best abilities to focus on early, how to leverage mechanics like Staggers and the damage multiplier, a handful of simple combos and mechanics every player should master, and lots more. No story spoilers here, and I'll keep the clips to early game combat encounters. By the end, you'll be well on your way to mastering combat in Final Fantasy XVI. First up, before you even start playing, you may want to head over into the controller tab in the system menu where you can change the default controls from type A to B or C. You want to choose the mode that's going to be the most comfortable for you to dodge and use melee and magic attacks with. For me, that's type B because it puts evade on circle and melee and magic attacks on R1 and R2. As a secondary consideration, keep in mind some abilities and combos require hitting the buttons for melee and magic at the same time, so you'll also want to think about which mode makes that easiest for you. Okay, now that you've got your controller mode picked out, let's talk abilities. You'll first gain access to the abilities menu when starting the Lost in a Fog main quest, and you'll have 50 ability points to spend. I recommend picking up Burning Blade and Swift Recovery right away. Burning Blade, which allows you to charge up fire on your sword by holding the melee attack button, is one of, if not the most versatile core abilities in the game. It's a good damage dealer on its own against smaller enemies, and as we'll discuss more in a minute, it's critical for a few important combos. Plus, in addition to its 25-point base cost, it only costs 180 points to master it, which you should definitely do at your earliest opportunity to reduce the charge time. By the way, you can check out the benefits of upgrading and mastering any skill by hovering over it and pressing triangle. Swift Recovery is a simple skill that allows you to get back up quickly after being hit. For 10 points and no need for upgrades, it's a no-brainer and you'll use it the entire game. With your 15 remaining points, you might as well pick up Stomp to start playing around with jumping off enemies to deal damage in the air, as that's a more intermediate advanced mechanic you may want to use later. Staying in the air will often allow you to avoid being hit. What's great about this ability system is you can respec at any time, so there's no reason to leave ability points unspent. You may very well want to take those 15 points back from Stomp in a little while to reallocate towards Burning Blade Mastery or something else, and you can easily do that. You can reset all abilities you've spent points on by holding down on the touchpad, but you can also lock abilities that you know you want to keep. Another important core ability is Magic Burst, which is unlocked by default and allows you to weave in a blast of magic between each hit of the basic 4-hit melee combo. This is quite good for dealing stagger damage, and the final blast deals a solid chunk of attack damage. We'll talk more about stagger in a second, but unfortunately, the timing on Magic Burst is very tight, especially before you master it. Honestly, I wouldn't bother trying to work it into your combat until you've mastered it, but it is worth spending a little time practicing outside of combat before then to get used to the timing. Mastery does make the window larger, but not by much. Basically, to make this work, you want to hit your magic attack between the middle and end of each of Clive's sword swings. Like I said, it's not worth getting frustrated trying to use this in combat really early on, but you do want to play around to get a feel for it because you will want to start using it once you've spent the points to master it. Above the core ability ring, we have the Phoenix Eikon abilities, which is the first iconic ring you'll unlock. Each of these has a few powerful abilities that operate on a cooldown, like the Rising Flames one we have here, which is your best big damage dealer for most of the early game. Each Eikon ring also has a diamond-shaped iconic feat, a sort of utility skill that can be used more frequently by hitting either the L2 trigger on controller mode B or circle on modes A and C. Our first iconic feat is Phoenix Shift, which basically teleports you to the currently targeted enemy and will even teleport you up into the air to attack aerial enemies. At the end of the teleport, if you hit either the melee or magic attack buttons, you'll do a shift strike or shift shot, respectively. The melee shift strike is the more useful one, and it deals a lot more damage than regular melee hits. You can actually chain shift strikes indefinitely, which can be a nice basic combo. But in combination with Burning Blade, Phoenix Shift is going to be the base of some other important early combos as well. One of those combos takes advantage of the game's critical strike ability, which I don't see many people talk about. Smaller enemies can be knocked onto their backs when hit with a large attack. They're only down for a few seconds, but if you can get to them quickly, you can hit your melee attack button and Clive will do a short cinematic attack that deals a lot of damage, often enough to kill smaller enemies or at least significantly weaken them. To do this reliably, I first unleash Burning Blade on an enemy. They'll be knocked back away from Clive, so to get to them quickly, we do a Phoenix Shift to teleport over there and then tap melee attack again to get the critical strike. This is a great way to take out smaller enemies, and you can actually chain this combo indefinitely if you just charge up Burning Blade right after hitting the critical strike. Another combo I like is basically doing this in reverse. As we mentioned before, you can land a shift strike by first doing a Phoenix Shift and then doing a melee attack as you come out of the shift. But this works with Burning Blade too. Charge it up and keep holding down your melee button. Then do a Phoenix Shift and release the Burning Blade at the end. This won't deal any more damage than a regular Burning Blade, but it lets you get to the enemy quickly to unleash it, and it can be the start of the previous combo. So shift into Burning Blade to knock down an enemy, shift again to get over to them, then tap melee attack to do the critical strike. Burning Blade on its own can also be used to easily start aerial combos. You just need to jump up before releasing it, and Clive will do an upward swing that lifts him, which is good for starting aerial combos on larger enemies. By the way guys, if you're finding these tips helpful, leaving a like would be much appreciated as it really does help me out. Another simple combo requires that we unlock the charged magic ability. This is basically the equivalent of Burning Blade for your magic attack. Regular tap-fired magic attacks are pretty weak, but a charged one is much stronger. What's cool is we can actually charge Burning Blade and magic at the same time, and then release them in sequence to deal some solid damage quickly. Release Burning Blade first, and then release the charged magic a moment later while the enemy is in the air. You do have to wait a beat before releasing the magic. If you release both at the same time, only one will work. Now, let's circle back to that magic burst ability. Assuming you've got the hang of weaving those magic blasts into your 4-hit melee combo, you'll want to start using this to not only deal damage, but also stagger enemies. However, there's a variation of the combo you'll want to consider. After the first melee hit, instead of tapping magic attack, hold it down. You'll fire off a magic burst like normal, but then you can continue on with the 4-hit melee combo while charging a more powerful magic attack the whole time. Release the charged magic burst at the end, and the whole combo will actually do a bit more damage. Shout out to Alex over at Boomstick Gaming, who I believe was the first to come up with this combo. What I like about it is that it doesn't require as much coordination and perfect timing as the regular version, and if you mess up the timing on the first melee hit, it's not really a big deal. Just keep going and keep holding down your magic button, and you'll still have a powerful charged magic burst to fire at the end. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about Stagger. This thin golden line under an enemy's health bar is called their will bar. Clive deals attack damage to the health bar, and it's based on his level, gear stats, and attack rating of the ability being used. Similarly, he deals stagger damage based on the same metrics to the will bar. This star icon indicates an ability's stagger rating. When an enemy's will bar is fully depleted, it will become staggered, unable to attack, and extra vulnerable to your attacks through a special damage multiplier. Now, when you get an enemy staggered, it's tempting to start rolling through all your Eikon abilities right away to make sure you get them in before the will bar refills and the enemy gets up. However, the smarter move is to do some other attacks first to get the multiplier up as close as possible to the 1.5x maximum. See, the multiplier starts at 1 and increases a bit with each hit you deal. It doesn't matter how strong the hit is, it just matters how many hits you land. So, you want to land a lot of fast attacks to get the multiplier up, and then unleash your powerful Eikon abilities to deal the most damage. In the earliest stages of the game, the best way to build that multiplier up is to use the magic burst ability to alternate melee and magic hits. A bit later, when you have your wolf companion Torgul, you'll want to spam down on the D-pad at the same time to get him to attack with Ravage as well. If controlling Torgul is a bit much, you can always equip the Ring of Timely Assistance, which automates him. By the way, Torgul can also heal you a bit by hitting right on the D-pad, but his healing occurs over time and will only fill the translucent part of the health bar. Still, it's free, and for a while, it's your only option when you run out of potions. Very early in the game, you'll probably only be able to get the stagger multiplier up to 1.2 or maybe 1.3, but soon you'll gain the Garuda Eikon abilities, including Gouge, which is one of the best for maxing out that stagger multiplier fast. So in the early game, my approach to maximizing stagger damage is to attack with Gouge and spamming Torgul to build up the multiplier fast as soon as the enemy goes down. Then I roll through whatever good damage Eikon abilities I have equipped, usually ending with Rising Flames, since that's the strongest one early on. If there's any time left, I'll try to get in a Burning Blade, Charged Magic Shot, or just some regular melee hits. Also, when using Gouge, you want to keep tapping your attack button to get a total of 16 hits, which is way more than the 6 you get by just tapping it once or holding it. Garuda's abilities are also helpful with partial staggers, which occur when an enemy's will bar reaches 50%. They won't fall down like the full stagger, but they will be stunned for a moment and vulnerable to increased damage. If you use the Deadly Embrace feat while they're partially staggered, you can yank big enemies down to extend the time you have to deal damage, which is very useful. Because Eikon abilities operate on cooldowns, managing their use is important for maximizing effectiveness. I recommend starting a fight off with 1 or 2 to get in some decent damage right away while still allowing them enough time to recharge for use during a stagger later on. With groups of smaller enemies, it's not as important to save the Eikon abilities. You can just use them as they become available and try to target clumps of enemies to damage multiple at once. Let's also talk about dodging, as it actually has an offensive function you should be aware of. The Precision Dodge ability, which is unlocked from the start, gives you more invincibility frames if you dodge just as an enemy attacks, but it also enables counterattacks with melee or magic. The timing to hit a precision dodge and then follow up with a counterattack is pretty tight, even with the ability mastered, but if you can do it, the damage dealt is quite good. I would definitely recommend using melee as your counter, but you'll want to get used to immediately following that up by tapping magic attack for a nice chunk of extra damage. To dodge in general, like in many games, the enemies have animations leading up to the actual attacks that are meant to trick you into dodging too soon. Learning the timing simply takes practice, but the key to learning is to not spam dodge and instead keep your cool, be intentional when you hit it, and take note on each attempt of whether you went too early or too late so you can zero in on the timing. While Clive doesn't get a proper shield in this game, at least not until much later with some of the Eikon abilities, you can still parry, but it's even more difficult than pulling off dodge counterattacks. To parry, you need to hit an enemy at the exact moment they're trying to hit you. Not only is the timing difficult, but you don't get any invincibility frames while trying to do this, so you still have to position yourself to avoid the enemy's attack while you're trying to land yours. Overall, I don't recommend most players try to parry until you're very comfortable with other aspects of the combat system we've already discussed. However, if you do want to parry, it's a bit easier with Burning Blade. Hold the charge and wait to release it for your parry hit instead of a regular melee attack. This makes it a little easier to get the parry, I think because Burning Blade has some invincibility frames, but I haven't confirmed that yet. A bit later into the first part of the story, you'll gain the Limit Break ability. If you've played the modern God of War games, this is very similar to Spartan Rage. The Limit Break bars live under your health bar and charge up both as you deal and take damage. When triggered by pressing in both thumbsticks, Clive will deal more damage, all Eikon abilities are enhanced, he regains health over time, and he won't get staggered by attacks, though they do still deal damage. Also, like in God of War, you can cancel the Limit Break at any time by pressing in the thumbsticks again. This will deplete the currently draining bar, but saves any bars that haven't been touched yet. As you get more proficient with combat, you'll want to consider conserving Limit Break charges so you can have some ready to boost your high damage combos, like unleashing a string of Eikon abilities on a staggered enemy. Okay, a few more random tips that aren't strictly combat related, but I still think you should know. You have lots of options to buy and upgrade gear fairly early, but you'll get a pretty good set of gear for free during the Holding On main quest, including a solid sword upgrade. So I would wait until after that before buying or upgrading anything. When you do buy weapons, don't sell them later. Many of them are required for upgrade recipes later on, and you'll get plenty of gil or gold by just playing through the story. So there's really no need to sell your gear. And finally, you'll probably want to stock up on potions from time to time, but they're a bit pricey at the merchants. Instead, once you've unlocked Caer Norvent after the Wings of Change main quest, which is pretty early, you can just fast travel there to find a high potion right on the road where you spawn in. A little further down, you can find 2 regular ones on the sides of the road. Just fast travel back and forth to this spot to stock up on potions and get yourself back to max health for free. Alright guys, those are all my essential combat tips for Final Fantasy XVI. If you enjoyed this video or learned something new, leaving a like would be much appreciated. I'll be doing more guides for things like the best Eikon abilities and advanced combat tips as well, so definitely subscribe if you want to check those out. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.